Hello, everyone. This is Claudiu Murgan, the host of the Spiritual Inspired podcast. And today, my guest is Angela de la Agua. Angela is the Golden Oracle, an initiated priestess in service to helping others access the divinity within each of us through heart opening, healing work, ceremony, self care, and spiritual practice. She has been rooted full time in Joshua Tree, California since 2011. As a devoted initiate of the desert, she embodies her role as a priestess through work as a divine healer, spiritual teacher, and ceremonialist. She is renowned for her work with sacred nourishment, fasting, yogic practice, ceremonial cacao, as well as an artist and photographer. Her ability to find beauty in all things enables Angela to recognize the divinity that dwells within everything and elevate the mundane to the sacred in everyday life. She continues to follow the path of the open heart as her sacred work continues to evolve and expand in her private session with clients, online courses and workshops, healing retreats, and ceremonial films. Her radiant energy reaches people around the world who seek spiritual guidance, soul level healing, and embodied self life. Angela, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's an honor to be joined by you today. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to start by finding out how did you end up with this name, Angela de la Agua?
Well, it was a name that was given to me probably about 13 or 14 years ago. Uh, it was a name that was given to me before I was living in the desert and divinely received. It was something that just came through. It was a time in my life when there was a lot changing internally, and my name, as I was born with, wanted to change with how I was shifting. So that came through pretty clearly. And it's interesting because soon after that, I ended up living in the desert. And up until my move to the desert, I'd always lived near the water. I'd lived near the ocean or, big bodies of water. Uh, and so there's something really interesting about how I was being guided to take on this name, La Agua, or El Agua actually is what it is in Spanish. That means water. And so interesting that I, was kind of bringing in this heightened energy of water with me to a place where there is no water.
Mm.
That would be, setting the stage for the next cycle of my life, living not near physical water. But it's definitely it's an element that I strongly identify with, and very much in tune with feelings and emotions, the things that water represents and symbolizes. So yeah, a little bit about that.
Yes, and to me it was very intriguing because I look at it from a very symbolistic point of view that you are the water in the desert and people, the oasis, if you want to say so, and people will come to you to quench their thirst, and in this case, spiritual thirst.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Yeah, and that's interesting too because that certainly I think could be true for sure. And I feel like that's been part of my personal journey in the desert is finding the water in the desert and it not being a literal thing. It's symbolic and finding the juice, the nectar of life that's really in everything, whether it's obvious or not.
And over the years, did you find that the energy of the desert is much more potent than the one of the water, or they are pretty much the same?
Oh, they're so different. But it's water can be everything. It can be everything, but the desert has a tendency towards the extreme. So in terms of elemental medicine, the desert has very intense, extreme type of medicine that it offers. That it can be through whether it's the heat or how dry it is, or through sharp, prickly things that are just, inherent to the plant life here. It tends to be a tougher teacher in that way, where water has a tendency towards being more nourishing, more gentle, but it can, they both can be both at the same time. There can be a gentleness to the desert also that's quite beautiful and profound, very deep, profound peace found in the stillness of the desert. And in my journey living here, which at this point I've lived here full time in Joshua Tree for 12 years. So it's been a long, deep, embedded relationship where I've lived here in solitude. So I've had the opportunity to really get to know this environment and this land in a very personal kind of way, and really have learned the depths of appreciation that I have for these things that on the surface or on the outside looking in feel they feel like there's a sharpness to it, or something unpleasant about the dry heat, or being in a place that might be perceived as not having a life or something like that, when in fact it's just brimming with life force here. And there it said that the Mojave Desert, where Joshua Tree is part of the greater Mojave Desert, and it said that the diversity of plant life that's here is second to the rainforests. So there's so much life here, but it's on a very different scale. It's on a micro scale. So a lot of it's invisible. You can't even see it. It's like in the soil, it's in the earth. So I find all of this really fascinating and part of the extraordinary beauty of the desert.
So, like in any other environment, we have to pretty much be observant of what's around us in order to identify the life forms beyond the microscopic level, of course. And as you mentioned, 12 years
Yeah.
gave you enough time to be that observant.
Absolutely, absolutely. I certainly wasn't observant like this before coming here. Being here and arriving in the desert was the beginning of a massive journey of transformation for me, and what my life has evolved into is, it looks nothing like where I had been before, or life as I knew it prior to being in the desert. So I really came here in a state of openness and receptivity to what the divine had in store for me, because I didn't really know why I was coming to Joshua Tree. It was a move that I made back in a time when there was nobody living out here really. And, it's very popular these days, Joshua Tree, but I didn't know a single person back then. There was not the presence of social media like Instagram like there is now. There was no Instagram when I moved here. And and it took a long time for me to find my community here and establish connections and relationships outside of just being on the land. But it definitely set the stage again for just really slowing down and paying attention to the most subtle shifts and the most subtle little pieces of life that are just ever present. And it's been the greatest gift of my life at this point, is the ability to recognize, how meaningful, how much life force there is in like a little tiny grain of sand, or in a twig that's dried up. It's like I really have genuinely, authentically been able to connect with this level of awareness where I see and recognize the beauty in all of these things. And there's something I like to say about this journey that I've had it here, which is I have found the nectar that's in dried up things.
Yes, beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So, what's the move to Joshua Tree a consequence of, let's say, life-shattering event, or a continuous communication with your spiritual guides who told you that you have to
Mm-hmm.
move?
Yeah. Well, when I moved to Joshua Tree, it was highly unanticipated, very unexpected. Before I was aware of Joshua Tree, I was living in LA, and I'd always lived in Southern California. So I'd really only known this kind of LA influenced sort of reality. And I again, like I love water and I really resonate with water. So I always wanted to be near water. I had never been to the desert, even though Joshua Tree isn't that far from LA. It was not something I'd experienced, but I was at a time in my life where things were falling apart. And it was the seeds of my awakening that were taking place where I wasn't in my Dharma. I was not on my spiritual path. I wasn't aware that I needed to be on one. I didn't know what that was. And so I was very much asleep, for a long time. How it feels to me. I was asleep for a very long time, but things, because I wasn't aligned with the truth of my nature, nothing was working out. Relationships and work and things like that. Everything was consistently not working out. And so I was noticing these cycles and these patterns repeating themselves. And I wanted to stop them. I wanted to pay attention to these things that I kept trying to perpetuate and recognize, like, you know what, I think I have to just let all of this go. And I had come to the desert for the first time with friends on a day trip. And I was open. It was the first time in my life I felt open and curious about what's outside of this reality the reality I've known my whole life. Like, what else is out there? And Joshua Tree immediately just vibrated so strongly. It's a powerful place. If anyone listening has never been, the energy here is very powerful, and it totally took me by surprise. And so I immediately, something shifted, just connecting with these boulders, these magical, powerful boulders here in the national park. And I basically just couldn't stop thinking about Joshua Tree at that point moving forward. And I would come back as often as I could, and like just on my own. That was new for me at that time too, was venturing out into the world by myself, where I'd always been very reliant on other people being part of anything that I was doing. So I was finding the truth of my heart that was saying, you need to be out here. And it doesn't matter that nobody else, can go with you or wants to go. It was something I wanted, and it didn't involve anybody else. So, because nothing was feeling aligned for me in my life in LA, I didn't know what alignment, meant for me. And I didn't know what, I was seeking necessarily. It just, all I knew is I needed to be here. My heart was happy here, and that's all that I knew. And so there was this defining moment that changed my whole life, that involved me being in the Joshua Tree National Park, sitting on a beautiful boulder, watching the sunset. And it was a weekend trip that I had taken. And this is probably about 8 months into my first time coming to Joshua Tree. And so I was really depressed watching the sunset, because I knew that when the sunset was over, that I was going to have to get off the boulder, I was going to have to get into my car and drive back to LA and go back to that LA life, to that job I didn't like, and the things that just weren't resonating anymore. And I realized, like, wow, if I'm so depressed thinking about having to go back to what I believe home is, I don't actually have to do that. Like, I'm so happy here on this boulder right now. This is where my joy is. Why don't I just stay here? Like, I can change my life. I can move to Joshua Tree. And it was just a shift in my thinking. It was this awareness that I have free will. I have the ability to change my life if I want to, and I don't have to live in a certain kind of way that everyone else seems to live. And again, because nobody was coming to Joshua Tree back then. And so it was just the knowing, this is what my heart wants, and I'm going to follow it. And it was literally the first time in my life that I had done something on that level in terms of following my heart's guidance, because there was no plan. I didn't know what I was going to do for work out here or anything like that. And not knowing anyone, it was a huge risk. And all I was feeling around it all was excited. Yeah, I was just excited. And within 2 months, I was living out here after having that epiphany. Like, job was done, left it all behind, and came out here and moved into the cabin that I'm still in now, 12 years later.
Nice. Thank you for sharing. Beautiful story. I
Yeah.
know that, and I mentioned in the introduction that you also um, tell people how to fast, teach them how to fast, and I'm about to embark on a 3-day water fasting, which is very great
Mm,
for me because I don't have weight to lose. It's just from cellular level, pretty much like a reset of the cellular level. And I'd like to go a little bit deeper for those who also are looking into doing this on and off water fasting. What would you recommend?
mhm, mhm. Well, first of all, well, that's amazing for starters that you're about to embark on that. Have you done a long water fast like that before?
Close to 20 to 48 hours.
Okay, so the longest you've gone is 48 hours.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a big moment for you. That's amazing. Well, for anyone who's interested in long-term fasting, I would just say that the way I approach these things is taking it slowly. And the longest fasts I've done, have been up to 4 months at a time. But I would say that the way that that was achieved, the reason that was possible at all is because I started slowly, and it didn't start out as me thinking that I was going to be doing a 4 month fast. It's always been about listening to my body and what feels good. Um, and that's been my method and my approach to fasting, just taking it one day at a time, basically. And I usually recommend to people who are interested in something like this, whether it's juice fasting or water fasting or anything like that, to start with small goals that are achievable, so that it doesn't feel like this long, daunting thing at the very beginning, because it can feel really exciting when you're inspired to do a long fast, like a 30-day fast. And for some people, it can work, but it doesn't necessarily work for everyone to have that kind of really ambitious goal. So I tend to because I'm such a gentle person by nature, I do have these what are perceived as very and experienced as extreme practices that have really changed my life. But my nature is very gentle, and I'm also very disciplined, so there's that too. But I also tended to move through these things just one day at a time, where I might suggest to a person, just set yourself up for a 3-day fast. Set it up for 3 days, and then once you've moved past 3 days, check in and see if you'd like to go 3 more days, and that kind of thing. Like, okay, you've made it to like 7 days in a fast. Do you want to go another week? And I kind of pace it that way for myself also, just kind of starting small and letting the experience itself guide me. And it's just interesting because the things that have been most formative for my spiritual awakening, my spiritual path, have been things that I kind of had huge blocks around, or really just a lot of disdain for. Like, I didn't like the desert, and now it's been the place that I love so much and has changed my whole life. And the same is to be said for fasting, because prior to my journey with fasting, it just felt like the worst thing in the world. Like, why in the world would somebody do such a thing to themselves? So I had a lot of fear around fasting, and um, so it's been surprising for me to have gone so deep into it. It's like I tapped into something that deeply resonated through this practice, and it just kind of it's moved on its own momentum in terms of how far I've gone with it over many years. And the first time I experienced a long-term fast was 90 days. That was my first long fast, and it sprang out of a 2-week fast. So I went into this thinking I was doing a 2-week fast, and it was just feeling so good. I had so much energy, and uh, there was such a momentum around it that didn't make sense to stop. There's no need to stop it, so I just kept moving forward. And next thing I knew, it was a 3 month long fast.
Oh,
But I also want to just mention too that uh, I think something really powerful does happen when we reset our whole realities like that. We just take a break from the things that we're used to eating or the things that we're used to doing. Because fasting, most of the time, it's something where you want to be in as restful a state as possible. And when I've done these long fasts, they've been with juice. I haven't done like 90, 120 days with just water. That's been with juice. So it had more of an energizing effect for me. Water fasts really require deep rest. You really have to like surrender life as you know it to take on a water fast. And so I think that so much can come from that. And any fast I've ever done, whether it's been like 3 days or 3 months, something important has come from it. And I would even say that I would go as far to say as the most transformational fasts I've had have been the shorter ones. Just in certain contexts, like I've done vision quests where I've gone out into nature and not had any food or any water at all for a period of days, and that's just like 5 days or something, and those have been the most transformative experiences of my life in contrast to some of these much longer fasts. So it's just interesting, and so I would say to just listen to the body. Listening to your body is the most important thing because it's not for everyone. And we certainly all have our limits, but it's amazing also if it's something that does work for you. It's amazing to just experience what you're capable of, and it's a beautiful strengthening of discipline too. And there's just so much reward that comes from a practice like that.
thank you. And do you prefer distilled water over regular filtered water? Is there any difference?
Well, I definitely, living in the desert where there's no water, it makes me think about water a lot. And I would say that intuitively, it feels to me that spring water is the best water that we can be drinking. And of course, most of us don't have access to fresh springs. So it's my preference to like bring in spring water, like purchase it, and if I can come across a source of spring water, just filling up jugs with it. But uh, I feel like because of the mineral content in spring water, that's the best water that we can be drinking. And it is possible to purchase it. So when I'm doing water fasts, I drink spring water for that.
Perfect. Thank you. Angela, I would like to turn
Yeah.
down
I,
towards the ceremonies you are holding, and especially the cacao ceremonies. And not too many people outside of the spiritual
yes.
community are aware of these ceremonies, which are pretty much on top of or in addition to what everyone else is doing, like plant medicine. Can you please expand a little bit on
Mhm.
what you offer?
Sure, sure. I'd love to share a little bit about cacao. Cacao is a plant medicine, but she's a feminine plant spirit. So I always refer to cacao as she when I'm talking about her. And cacao is very sacred plant medicine to indigenous cultures, to the ancient Mayans, especially. And so it's a medicine that's been on the planet for forever, like for forever. And so, but we don't know about it largely until more recent years. And in my the lineage in which I come from, with working with cacao, it's been taught to me that cacao medicine has been held so sacred by the Mayans that it was kept hidden, like their ceremonies were kept hidden. So it's probably part of the reason why we just don't know about it very much, or not aware of these ceremonies. Like, what is a cacao ceremony? I knew about cacao on my journey, and maybe a lot of people are familiar with cacao in general. cacao bean, the ingredient in chocolate, which makes chocolate, but it's the pure source of chocolate that's not processed in any way. So it's cacao is coming from a bean that is grown from a cacao tree. And cacao trees produce fruit, and the beans inside of the fruit are the cacao that we consume, that eventually might become chocolate, or otherwise is just enjoyed as pure cacao. And cacao, the reason that we want to work with cacao is, as a plant medicine, she's very gentle. And on the spectrum of plant medicines, she's on like the most gentle side of the spectrum. So if you want to have a plant teacher in your life, to get to know like a plant spirit and really form a relationship with this plant that wants to bring healing into your life, cacao is a very gentle teacher. And she's basically here to help us learn how to love ourselves more. And that's what I always share about cacao, is that she's a plant that is here to help us access the greatest reserves of love that dwell within the heart, because she's a heart opening medicine. And in that process of opening the heart, it makes it more accessible to access our feelings, things that we might repress, or things that we are burying inside, things that ultimately, when we have unprocessed emotions, it's going to create some kind of disease in the body. And so she brings a lot of healing in to our lives if we allow that. If we allow ourselves to receive that kind of gift of opening up our heart through working with her medicine, so that we can welcome any kind of experiences or emotions or feelings that we have negative associations with, things that we are rejecting about our lives or rejecting about ourselves, to love every single aspect of ourselves. And I feel that that is the key component to wholeness and to healing, is to welcome all that we are and not rejecting anything, but embracing all that we are, and that being the key to being a whole, complete, divine being.
So in other words, even if we think at cacao like something very dull, when used in a special ceremony, in a special setup, it can induce
Got it.
different states of awareness and consciousness, and will open up
Right.
our heart to a different
Right.
perspective of life.
Right. Thank you for clarifying. Yes. I'll say a couple things about that. Cacao is a powerful heart opening medicine, a heart healing medicine, but she's also very nutrient dense. And so even anyone who's drinking cacao or consuming cacao is going to benefit from cacao, in some way, because there's so much nourishment. She's considered to be the most nutrient dense food on the planet. She's got a lot going on. And also, another thing that is said about her with the ancient ones is that she is the food of the gods. So this is indeed a very divine food to be consuming. So it's something that you definitely are encouraged to incorporate into your diet, into your daily life in some kind of way. But yeah, absolutely. When you're working with a plant medicine like cacao with a certain level of intention, you're going to get a different level of experience out of that, for sure. And so that's where ceremony comes in. And within a ceremony, what's involved, like just kind of like a brief way of describing what might be experienced in a cacao ceremony, because people can share cacao ceremonies in so many different ways. And so I know best how my teachers share cacao ceremony, or how I share cacao in ceremony. But cacao ceremony is generally drinking the pure cacao paste that comes from grinding the beans, the whole beans. So you get the whole medicine, nothing is removed from cacao when you're using a whole bean. Like, for example, if you are using cacao powder, you're not getting the full medicine of cacao because it's missing the fat solids. So you want to, if you want the full medicine and the full nutrients that are available from cacao, you want to use the paste or be eating the beans. And so just a little side note about that. But when in ceremony, you're generally drinking the pure form of cacao as a beverage, and in that space, transformation takes place. The heart opens, and you might be doing this by yourself, or you might be with other people. And when you're with other people, more is possible because the field of energy is stronger. There's more opening happening. There's a lot more support for what's possible too. So I do encourage people to experience ceremonies, at least with another person, just to access deeper experiences of healing. And it's a beautiful time when the heart is open to explore what's happening in the heart and to connect with the spirit of cacao and really directly receive messages and guidance, or visuals from her, and so there's a lot possible within this experience of ceremony. And and so there can be music involved. I like to offer mantras or different kinds of sound instruments. This all just helps to open up the heart more and more. And so when the heart is open, we feel compassion. We're able to access compassion. We're able to access unconditional love. And so that's kind of the key component to this experience with cacao, is that's the big thing we're going after, or not necessarily going after, it's not a good way to say it, but that's what we are blessed with, is a better way to say it, is we are blessed with this experience of unconditional love. And so in ceremony, we can generate a really powerful field of energy, a powerful field of unconditional love that brings healing to us individually. It brings healing to the circle as a whole. And that becomes a powerful transmission of love, unconditional love for the greater world. When it's very important, I feel, to be having these kinds of sacred rituals, because they really serve to anchor healing energy and unconditional love on the planet. And so it's one of my guiding forces behind why I'm called to share ceremony at all, is because of the anchoring of the energy. And the blessing it's multifold. It's something that we bless ourselves with, these healing experiences, but it naturally ripples out into the world and impacts everything that is, all that is.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I have to experience such ceremony. I mean, I did other plant medicine ceremonies, but I will go for the gentle one for sure, because the other ones were, some of them were at a different level of excitement. So gentleness is it's good
Yeah.
to have. Angela, you talk about
Well, it's
sorry,
like the
go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say kind of the greater uh the greater teaching that cacao brings to us at this time, and the reason that her medicine, these ceremonies are coming into the world now, where more and more people are becoming aware of cacao ceremonies and working with cacao as a medicine, is that we see the state of our world and recognize this time of great transformation that we're in collectively. And so we're in this huge initiation process collectively, globally. And the beauty of cacao is that she's helping us to move out of the mind and to drop into the heart. And that's kind of in my perspective, that's the greater initiation that we're all in, is that we have to start learning how to live our lives guided by our hearts and not by the mind, and not try to let the mental processes determine, what's best for us. We have to let the heart, the truth of who we are, everything that is divine, we access that through the heart. And great healing comes to us collectively when more and more people are accessing the truth of love within themselves and navigating their lives from that place of an open heart and navigating life with unconditional love and compassion.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. And you mentioned the state of the world. How do you perceive the world moving forward in the next 2 to 3 years, let's say spiritually? Are we going to come together and move this planet towards the light, or what's your perspective, please?
Well, my perspective on that is that I feel that we have come through a pretty intense phase of our initiation. I do feel that we're on the other side of it to an extent. I don't think that we're in the free and clear zone. I think there's still a lot of work to do. But I think that this process has been necessary for a lot of people to wake up and to recognize that change needs to happen, and that the change has to happen within ourselves. And that's why there's a lot of spiritual awakening taking place in the last few years. And, so it's coming in these waves of awakening. And what wants to come through right now is that we are well positioned to come to a healing place, but there's more work to be done. There's more work to be done. And I think that there's a lot that we are kind of experiencing that requires patience. And I feel like this is something that we need to, as a medicine collectively, is we need to learn to be more patient. And the things that we're doing now are the outcomes, or the greater gifts, the greater advancements probably come at a point where we don't get to actually directly experience them. And we have to recognize the beauty of that, that it takes time for transformation to take place. And I think that's really important, an important part of the initiation, because we are in a time on the planet where things are so sped up, and we have this expectation that we just have things as soon as we want it. There's this kind of quick, we want to be satisfied immediately with something, and the attention spans are very short. That's the word I wasn't grabbing it. Yeah, thank you, totally. We want instant gratification, and I, that's very damaging, when we have such short attention spans, and we don't get to live life in a way where we really get to appreciate how much more strong and grounded in experiences can be when they take time to form, and that we have to struggle or be challenged by something in order to really grow and expand. And I really feel that for myself too. And it's been a big part of my journey living in the desert, as I've been very challenged living here. This has not been an easy place to live. And I don't regret a single moment of it. This has all been for my own learning and my own expansion. And when, and the same thing could be said for fasting as well. Like, that's a patient process, and you can't expect a quick reward from something like that. You can't just, and we're in a culture where we want to take a pill or something that fixes us or heals us immediately. And so, but yeah, we've lost the ability to appreciate a patient process and why it's necessary for a really powerful, healing, transformative journey. There are no quick results for extraordinary, life-changing experiences. And if we want the planet to change, it's going to take time. And I think it better serves us to appreciate the journey of it rather than, hoping that it'll all be over soon. And I think too that there's something really a powerful practice in fasting, because we were talking about fasting, and I think that there's something that some people are critical about a practice like that because they see it as being something that's depriving yourself of something, like you shouldn't have to do that, or like that it's not healthy or something like that, and I honor that perspective, but at the same time I feel like it's such a powerful practice to if it's if you're approaching this from a healthy mindset, that to deprive yourself of something as a practice makes you more resilient. It's something that helps you access your true strength within, and resources and reserves of power that you didn't know that you had.
Exactly.
And so I really feel strongly about that. And as an example, like if there's a time on the planet again, like we did experience a couple of years ago, where there was this scare that maybe we won't have access to food, when everything kind of got really shaken up suddenly, and people are freaking out. They're going to the grocery stores and hoarding all the food into their shopping carts and doing things like that. And because of my relationship to food and my relationship to fasting, when all of that part of the chaos was going down on the planet, I was not afraid of going hungry. I was not afraid of starving. I just thought to myself, the first thoughts that came to my mind during that time frame were the knowing, like, I don't actually really need food. I'll be fine.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of a powerful thing, rather than being, in fear and, feeling like I'm going to die if I don't have food. And I just have the knowing in me, like, well, I'm going to be fine at least a week if I don't have food or water. I know that. So
At least you have sun, permanent
yeah,
sun there, vitamin D.
yeah,
You can get your prana directly from nature. So
exactly. The
yeah,
nature is the source of prana at that point.
yeah.
Precisely.
And
Yeah.
because we are talking about awakening, I strongly believe that awakening comes in steps for most of us. And
Yeah.
one of the first step is to get the truth. And truth these days, is a concept that is losing ground and is being turned into deception or is being distorted. You
Mhm.
also developed a program called Descent into Truth.
Mm,
Can you expand on that, please?
sure. Yeah, it's probably one of my most favorite things that I offer is descent into truth. And that, I was sharing a little bit earlier about cacao helping us to access the parts of ourselves that we might normally reject, so that we learn how to love these hidden rejected pieces of ourselves, to be in a state of wholeness, to experience wholeness. And that's essentially what descent into truth is about. And that's a really kind of specifically astrologically timed program that coincides with when the planet Venus goes retrograde. And that's a cycle that doesn't happen very often. So it happens every 18 months. And so Venus retrograding is about a 40-day process. And so I run this program for the duration of Venus retrograde. So it's around a 40-day long program, and it's a journey that I channeled, and so it's a totally original channeling of an experience, but it's derived from ancient texts that are kind of describe where this whole, or like what the significance of Venus retrograde is about. And just in a nutshell, when Venus goes retrograde, it's this symbolic myth of the story of a goddess in ancient Sumeria, in ancient Sumer, that is Inanna, who is known as the Queen of Heaven and Earth, and she is seen in ancient Sumer as Venus in the sky. So Venus is Inanna, and when Inanna, or when Venus goes retrograde, it's a journey that Inanna takes through the underworld, because Venus is hidden from the sky. And and Venus descends as the evening star. And then on the other side of the Venus retrograde, she is rebirthed as the morning star. So it's a huge transformative journey that Venus or Inanna is taking through the underworld, and to go through the underworld is a very dark, shadowy sort of experience, but it's an initiation process, and it's something where we're being invited to meet our shadow aspects and to find the truth of our nature within all of it, basically. I mean, I could go on and on and on about it, but through that process, which is inherently a death rebirth, it's the death of the morning, or it's the death of the evening star and the rebirth of the morning star. And that's a journey that we can take with Venus, by working with her cycles, in that Venus retrograde timing. So that's what Venus, or that's what descent into truth is about. It's about descending into the truth of our hearts and reemerging as rebirthed morning stars.
Yes, and I think also this program also can tie into the womb chakra healing, which also is about inner discovery. Do you want to talk about that as well?
Sure. Yeah, I am initiated in a lineage that has a lot of knowledge and ancient practice around the womb chakra, and it's an energy center in the body that a lot of people aren't really aware of. It's kind of considered to be newer information that has been brought back to the planet in these modern times. But it's said that the womb chakra is a chakra point in the body that is its own energy center. It's not the second chakra, which it might be considered. The womb is part of the second chakra, but in these ancient teachings, these come from palm leaf manuscripts. These teachings that were located in India and retrieved by a modern day saint named Sri Kleshwar. And it's all this amazing information about how the womb chakra is the most sacred, powerful point in the body. It's the point of our divinity in the physical body, and that it's not something that only women have. For example, it's every single human has a womb chakra, and this has a lot to do with all of us, all humans, having the access to our divinity, and that we have the birthright, or our divinity is our birthright, I should say. So the womb chakra, the healing process that I offer through this lineage, through healing work and through sacred practices, helps to purify it and strengthen the power of the womb chakra, because there's a lot of trauma that can be stored in the womb chakra. So there's a need to clear it and to heal it and to develop a strong, powerful connection and relationship with the womb chakra. And in this lineage, it's said that we all are birthed out of all of our souls basically are birthed out of the womb chakra of Divine Mother. And so we all have access to her womb chakra, and we all have access to her creation energy. And so the healing work with the womb chakra and practices that you can undergo on your own helps you to cultivate and strengthen that relationship with Divine Mother and ultimately your own divine nature. So it's been a really powerful piece in my own healing journey and my work as a healer. And so it's something that's continuing to expand in my own offerings and services.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And yeah. Angela, you are in Joshua Tree right now. Are you going to stay there for much longer time, or your journey will take you somewhere else?
It is really hard to say right now. We're having this interview at a very interesting time in my life here. I have to leave my home actually after 12 years, and it's not something that was my choice, but it's something that I do believe that I have chosen, you know, it doesn't feel like it, but I've chosen it. So I feel like I'm being called to be somewhere else. So this is kind of the last interview that I'm going to be doing in this space. And it's very special and sacred for me to be able to like have the last couple of weeks that I have living here to share this time with you and your audience. So really appreciate it. But I do not know where I'm moving next. Actually, I just know I have to get out, and that's clear. And it's a hugely divinely led process where there's just a lot of trust right now. And I don't know if ultimately I will stay in Joshua Tree. I just have to be honest about that. But I might, and I might not. So I'm open and I'm listening for that guidance to come in. That just has not come in clearly at this point. So it's a huge life shift. And it's definitely rocking the foundation of this whole beautiful journey I've been able to share a little bit about with you today. And so it's exciting because it feels like the divine mother is definitely setting me up for something, you know, really big for the future, because I need it. And you know, it's like that initiation of patience and trust and surrendering to the unknown, which has always been such a, you know, these have been key pillars in the work that I do with people, is surrendering to the unknown and trusting in what you trusting the divine, and trusting in the mystery. And I'm definitely living it right now. So
Yes, you did a great job with the space. It looks beautiful behind you. So
yeah.
and I can
Yeah.
see the reflection of the desert in the window behind you a little bit. So yeah, empty space.
It's been a true gift living here. And as you can see, I've not packed it up yet, and I have to be gone at the end of the month. So
Angela, we are approaching the end of the interview. Any final thoughts?
I don't think so. I've just been so, I mean, again, I feel like this interview and this opportunity to connect with you has come at a really meaningful time in my life. And it's been a really beautiful time of just reflecting on the wholeness of my journey in this conversation with you as I'm at the precipice of a whole new cycle beginning. And I have, you know, received so much from this path, living in this way. You know, everything that I've come to in my spiritual journey, whether it's the fasting or womb chakra healing, cacao ceremony in general, it's all happened through my surrendering to the unknown of the desert and living in this way, you know. And so that's kind of the gift, the great gift that I've been blessed with, is just that ability to surrender to the unknown. And so that's just kind of one of my final offerings to your audience, is the power of surrendering to the unknown and just trusting your heart to guide the way forward, because there are extraordinary things that you can't even imagine that are possible when you just trust the guidance of your heart.
Thank you very much, and I wish you a smooth time moving to the new location, either at Joshua Tree or somewhere else in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And to my viewers, thank you for watching. Share it, like it. Get a free copy of my book when you visit my website. And until next time, love and gratitude.